guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going over 5 books that I think you absolutely need to read in 2022. So we are going to start off the list with my absolute favorite book of all time, and I will always put this on any list that I make of books that you have to read, because I feel like everybody has to read it. So this book is called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom, and Mitch Albom is one of my favorite authors. This is my favorite book of all time. And a lot of his works have more of a religious tone to them, which I'm not necessarily a religious person. I'm definitely a spiritual person. I have my own spiritual beliefs. But I kind of like take God to just mean, you know, whatever. I just kind of interpret that however that works for me. And I feel like if you do the same, you'll definitely get something out of this book. And what I find with a lot of Mitch Albom's work, this is not something that I typically read, but yet he's one of my favorite authors, and he is an author that I pick up immediately. As soon as he releases a book, I pick it up. And the first one that I ever read was this one, and I read it I think when I was 18, maybe 18 or 19 for the first time, and I've read it countless times since, and it continues to be my favorite book of all time. I honestly just find that this book really makes you think about how you see yourself in the world and how other people see you and how you can affect other people without even realizing it. So this book basically follows a man who passes away, a man named Eddie who passes away, and it goes through the 5 people that he meets once he leaves this plane and onto the next stage of life. He goes to heaven, and this is the 5 people that he meets immediately when he gets there. And basically this is all about, like I said, people that have impacted his life or people that have been impacted by him in his life that he didn't even realize. So it just makes you think about how the smallest interaction with someone can really truly affect them and you don't even know. And it just kind of makes you think about your interactions with other people and how they might see you in comparison to how you see yourself, and that maybe you're a little bit more important than you realize and maybe other people play a bigger role in your life than you realize as well. So it just kind of really makes you have a different take on life, on your interactions with people, on your relationships, and honestly, it's just a beautiful story, and I highly recommend this to anyone. So the next book that I am going to suggest is my favorite book that I read last year in 2021. This was my #1 book that I read, and that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Now, this is a pretty popular book. It's gotten a lot of buzz and a lot of hype for good reason. So basically, this is all about a woman who is at the end of her rope. She decides she no longer wants to continue on in this life, and she takes her own life. And once she does that, she passes through into some sort of, it almost seems like a purgatory sort of situation, but it is a huge library of books. And every single book, like there's millions of books on the shelf, every single book is an alternate reality of a life she could have had if she made a different choice in her life. So this is like, you know, from something as simple as going to a different place for lunch than you would have went. You know, it's like every single little decision that you make in your life has offshooting realities. And this library that she crosses into houses all of these realities. So she's able to open up a book and literally jump into that reality and see what her life would be like if she made a different choice. And you get to go with her through all these different choices. She keeps trying on different lives. And the minute that she's living her life in this life, and the minute that she becomes not happy with the life that she's chosen, she immediately kind of like comes back out and is able to choose a different life. It's a really thought-provoking book because it really makes you think about every decision that you make in your life and how decisions, like we make millions of decisions every single day without even thinking about it, you know, from like what you're going to have for breakfast to, you know, what you're going to do for the day or whatever. From small little decisions like that to bigger decisions like where you're going to live, what kind of job you're going to take, if you're going to have kids, like that sort of thing. And, you know, it really makes you realize that, yeah, there is different realities. Like from whatever you choose. And it kind of makes you think about like making the right decisions on a day-to-day basis in order to end up with a life that you are happy with. So I really, really enjoyed this book. Like I said, it was my #1 pick of last year. So if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend that you pick it up. The next book is a self-help book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I've talked about this one on here before, but this is one of the best self-help books that I have read in a long time, because it teaches you how to completely change your life by just integrating different habits into your everyday routine. So he basically doesn't want you to completely overhaul your life and to just become a different person overnight and just start all these new things and just continue on with them, because for most people that's not attainable and that's not sustainable. But if you just incorporate small little habits and kind of sandwich them in between things that you already do, it is going to be so much easier. And he just explains things in such a way that makes it seem really enticing and really easy. And it really is easy if you actually listen to his message and, you know, take away what he wants you to take away from it. It is easy, and it is easy to change your life that way. And it's not a huge overhaul, which just makes it seem less complicated and less scary when you're trying to make huge changes in your life, because we're all trying to improve on ourselves, right? Like, I mean, most of us are trying to improve upon ourselves and trying to get healthier with mental health, with physical health, trying to be happier, you know, like trying to move on in with our jobs and careers and just be better. And this is a really, honestly, simple way to do that is mostly just common sense, but he just formulates it in such a way that it makes sense. So if you have some goals that you are wanting to work on this year, this book is definitely for you, and I highly recommend it. The next book that we are going to talk about today is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is one of my favorite books that I have read this year so far, and it basically follows our main character named Addie, and for all intents and purposes, she makes a deal with the devil to live forever, or she can live basically as long as she wants. Whenever she decides that she is done, she's seen enough of the world, she's had enough, that can be however long she wants. But of course, making a deal with the devil never really goes the way that you intend it to, and the devil is sneaky. And he ends up trapping her in an existence that is really, really hard for her, because he makes it so that any person that she ever meets does not remember her. So she can be, you know, she can meet someone and have the most amazing time and just be, you know, in love at first sight sort of situation, but the second that that person gets up from their chair and goes to the bathroom and comes back and sees her, they don't remember her, and she has to start all over again. So imagine, we're following her as at this point she has lived for 300 years and not a single person ever remembers her. So you can imagine what sort of a life it is that she's living and how hard that would be. But we follow her, and one day she meets a person who does remember her. And we follow along with that relationship, and we find out some things about these two characters, and it's heartbreaking, it's heartwarming, it's a tale that just is whimsical and beautiful, and honestly it just takes you there, it takes your mind there, and it's just like one of the most, like I said, heartbreaking stories, but at the same time it's just so wonderful. And I absolutely, once again, I absolutely loved this one. One of my favorite reads so far this year, and I really want you guys to read it too. And the last book that we are going to talk about today is one, once again, that I've talked about before, and that is The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Moldavsky. This is one of my favorite thrillers that I read last year, and I loved it so much, you guys. I loved it to the point where after I was done, I immediately went on Goodreads and tried to find more by Goldie Moldavsky that was going to be somewhat like this. I tried to find other books that were like this, because it gave me so much nostalgic feelings, because it's all about basically the 90s and like early 2000s slasher movies, and it just made me so nostalgic. I loved it so much. But basically, we have a teenage girl who has gone through an extremely traumatic experience. She moves to a new school, and she ends up, through a series of different encounters, she ends up coming into this group called the Mary Shelley Club, and what they do, this kind of club, I guess, it's a secret club, and what they do is they pull pranks on the student body of the school that kind of revolve around horror movies, like I said, from the early 2000s, 90s, that sort of thing. So each one of the members in the club gets a turn to kind of pull a prank based on one of these movies, and the person that can make somebody scream the person that can make somebody scream first is the winner of this challenge. So, but of course something goes horribly wrong and people start to actually die in these pranks, and it's not anybody in the club that they know of is doing this, and so, you know, it's a thriller. So, but I just loved all the references, and it just kind of like put me back in the 2000s space, which, I mean, was just such a good time, let's be real. It was just such a good time. So it was just a really fun book to read, but also a thriller, and I didn't see the ending coming, and I just really, really liked it. All right, you guys, so those are the 5 books that I think you should read in 2022. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read them already and what your thoughts on them were, or if you're planning to read them. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!